I've heard disturbing things about TTIP. I'm trying to find out more. So, John, what is TTIP?
Well, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or we call it TTIP for short, is this new comprehensive trade and investment deal which is being cooked up between the European Commission and the US government. It's a far-reaching deal which is going to affect almost every single part of our lives, our societies, our communities, the economy and also the environment for the future.
Specifically, what will TTIP do? Keith?
TTIP will give more access to foreign governments from businesses from America to bid for privatised services of the NHS.
How do you know TTIP would impact on the NHS?
So we've seen in black and white that health services, medical services, physiotherapy, dental services, they're all included within TTIP, and that's been confirmed both by our government and also by the European Commission.
Blanche, tell me about the NHS.
So with TTIP, we're likely to see more and more big American corporations providing NHS services. Also, as we know, there's already privatisation in our NHS, but if any future government wanted to get rid of that privatisation and wanted to repeal the Health and Social Care Act, it would probably be impossible for them to do so without risking being sued by big American health companies.
Sued? Yesterday, I heard that big corporations could sue governments.
The third pillar of TTIP is this new power it will give to investors to be able to sue our governments for loss of profits. And this is a completely new right. US corporations will be able to come in their thousands and start suing the government, even if it's introduced public health policies or environmental policies or other social standards which we consider to be important. And the cases of this already are extraordinary. You know, when Germany decided to phase out nuclear power, it's now being sued for billions and billions of euros.
Why would governments elect to sue themselves?
It's very difficult to say why governments would want to open themselves up to being sued. Basically what they're saying is that they want to provide protections for big businesses if they want to invest in the UK and encourage them to invest in the UK. But what the reality of what's going to happen is that the government will be liable to be sued by big businesses if they do anything and pass any laws that might hurt those corporations' interests. So there are some examples across the world where Philip Morris, the big tobacco company, is suing a government who's brought in plain packaged cigarettes. What if the government chose to raise the minimum wage and they would then run the risk of being sued by any big corporations whose interests were going to be hurt by that?
Who is organising all of this?
The deal's being negotiated behind closed doors at the moment. There are EU negotiators and US negotiators as well, but these are not people who have been elected by us.
It's a deal which is being negotiated entirely in secret. They've put a 30-year ban on all public access to the key documentation behind TTIP. And also it's one which none of our MPs in this country or any other national parliament across Europe even get any sight of until right at the end when it's too late.
That's weird. It sounds profoundly undemocratic.
It feels profoundly undemocratic. It feels very strange in the 21st century to imagine that people are negotiating things that could affect all of our lives, and yet they won't tell us exactly what's going on.
I was first alerted to TTIP because of a food scare.
Well, the food industry is something that is worrying many people because The concern is that we drive standards down because there has to be a regulatory conformity between something that can sell in the US and something that can sell in the EU.
The US Secretary of State for Agriculture has basically said, you don't get to choose. Under free trade, you have to accept these products because if they're good enough for US citizens, then they're also good enough for European consumers.
Now, if you look at GMOs, 70% of all processed food in America has got GMOs. If you look at the pesticides that are in common use in America, there's 82 which actually are forbidden in Europe.
Also, we have the growth hormones that in the US they use for 90% of all beef production. The cattle are injected with these growth hormones, they grow more quickly, they can be slaughtered earlier, and therefore they become more profitable. But in Europe, those growth hormones have been banned because they've been found to be carcinogenic.
And as far as animal welfare standards are concerned, well, really the US doesn't have many animal welfare standards. So we would see worse conditions for animals in farming.
Let's spice it up a bit. Keith and John, have a conversation with each other.
Yeah. So is this?
Yeah, no, it seems good. Yeah. I'm not working or being paid by anyone. I'm simply experimenting at making a campaign film, and I'm doing it entirely on my own. But the film developed a life of its own and a rather strange and unexpected twist.
We're going to step closer to corporations making the laws and not governments. Every single regulation and law that we've introduced is up for grabs if it seemed to damage investors' investments. And that for me is really, really worrying, and that's a complete abdication, in my view, of what politicians should be doing.
And until we can actually rise up and say that's unacceptable and call our representatives to account across Europe, they're going to come back with more and more of these dirty trade deals, more and more of these internal directives which get rid of all of the things that we hold so dear. And that's the political challenge we've got. We need to get a completely new Europe if we want Europe to survive. Because, of course, what's happening at the moment is so many groups are beginning to say, Europe is bust. Europe is corrupt. Europe is not representing us. And that's why you're getting this massive upsurge in nationalism as people say we want to get sovereignty back into our own countries.
We're being offered a European referendum, I think. How would I vote? It's a question worth thinking about. It's over there, somewhere, Brussels. It feels remote. The EU, it feels very remote. That's a problem. Anonymous officials tinkering away, deciding the shape of carrots. I bet millions of us feel that way. Probably tens of millions. Maybe hundreds of millions. I bet we have more power than we realise. I bet all of Europe will be watching a UK referendum. Europe has to change if it wants my vote. I want to feel I can have a say in Europe. I want to feel that my concerns can be heard. Europe needs to engage me if it wants my vote. We should be able to elect the European presidents and the Commission. Why can't we? I bet we have a lot more power than we realise.
Go for it! Go for it!
Do you think we should update the EU anthem?
So that's it.